Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. You already heard my name. I am Mansoor Ahmad Bhatty, and I have a bachelor's in engineering and then an MBA, and I am a certified project manager with 43 years of professional experience, and a lot of it in in very senior level positions. But then I decided to follow my passion and went for my Ph.D. from Morris University, and I finished well in time, and I did well. My doctoral research was on impact of teaching presence on learning outcomes, a qualitative study of perceptions through the lens of online teachers. I've been conducting webinars, and even for American Center for Studies in Distance Education. I'm also a reviewer for American Journal of Distance Education and also a reviewer for Quality Matters for their continued and professional education courses. Next slide. You can move. Next. In fact, the next one, please. Now, you heard the word teaching presence, and a lot of people here and everywhere during my research, I found that the definition of teaching presence was a big issue. My problem at this point, the conference organizers have given me an impossible task. They want me to tell you in 25 minutes what took me 3 years, reading of over 300 articles and research to find out about teaching presence. So I'll do the best I can, but even if I'm able to create enough interest in some of you to think of looking at my dissertation to really see what this is all about, uh, as the moderator said, the link is available in the discussion forum. Please take a look, and you can sort of see the link. Now, just like engagement, there is no universally agreed definition of teaching presence. Next slide, please. The people who actually came up with the idea of the community of inquiry model, which most of you must have heard, these people, and you can see the model on the screen, these people were the first one to come up with the idea of teaching presence and the concept and how it works. Next slide, please. Then big names like Shia, Hayes, Vickers, and Mehta, they define teaching presence as an online instructional orchestration. And you'll see later as to why they said that. Then Garrison, Anderson, and Archer in 2000 called that as a binding element in creating a community of inquiry. So when you saw the model, the two slides before, it was showing teaching presence as a circle intersecting with cognitive and social presence. But however, here what they are saying here is that teaching presence is the binding element between those two presences. It is not just one of the presence in the community of inquiry model. Now, next slide, please. Now, after 3 years of research, I have come up with a definition, and that definition is primarily based on two unique distinctions of my dissertation or of my doctoral research, and you can see both of them on the slide. 90% of all research that has been done on teaching presence has always been done from the learner's perspective. More than 90%. The teacher's perspective was always somehow in the background. Secondly, 95% of all research on teaching presence has been on using quantitative research. Now, when you talk of teaching presence, you talk of perception, you talk of teachers, what you need is rich, thick description. And that you can only get if you take the qualitative research route. So that is what I did. I took the qualitative research route and I looked at teachers' perspective and teachers' perceptions to do my research and then come up with the findings and then the deliverables and everything. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, this definition, before I talk to you about this definition, the difference, the teaching presence is the soul of a body. It's just like, the difference between a live and a dead man is the soul. Similarly, teaching presence is the soul that gives life to asynchronous pedagogy. Without teaching presence, asynchronous pedagogy is like a dead person. Now, teaching presence gives the pedagogy, uh, and if you have heard of Patsy Rodenberg, who talks of the second circle, where there is presence, there's give and take, there's energy being exchanged, and there's a back and forth. That is what teaching presence does, basically. It is like a second circle in one of those four circles of life. The definition that I have of teaching presence is that when a teacher is acting as a conductor of an orchestra, there is teaching presence being created. And you can imagine how a conductor, manages an orchestra and the sort of influence that it has. The teacher has to act as a curator of a museum. Now, a curator, what does a curator do? A curator of a museum brings to life the artifact by giving information about it, by placing it in such a place, by visualizing and giving you the visual of it in such a place that to you it looks like as if it is alive, like a choreographer in a theater. A teacher who can be a choreographer in an education system is somebody like a choreographer who takes you emotionally out of the place and makes you travel with himself or herself through the journey that the choreographer is taking the whole theater through. So the teacher needs to do that, and that is teaching presence. And and then the teacher has to be part of the student's digital experience. Next slide, please. Next. Next slide. Okay. Now, while I was doing my research, go back, please. While I was doing my research, what I found to my surprise was that a lot of researchers and a lot of teachers, in fact, 75% of the teachers, were wrongly or erroneously you interchanging the concept of teaching presence with teacher presence. And that cannot be done. See, teaching presence is like a magnetic field. When the teacher acts as a magnet, teaching presence is the magnetic field that the teacher has created in which the students operate. And the teacher can, I will not use the word manipulate, but teacher can influence them through the magnetic field and make them do what the teacher wants to do, although the teacher is nowhere to be seen. It is just a magnetic field which by itself cannot be seen. The teacher presence is a part of teaching presence. A teacher presence is primarily related to physical proximity. Now that could be, face to face or on ground. It could be face to face asynchronous, synchronous, but physical proximity, and it is more reactive to the student's need than the teaching presence. Now the teaching presence has three elements in it: the instructional design and course structure, the facilitation of discourse, and direct instruction. The second two are the teacher presence aspect of the teaching presence. So I found out that this is a very common error, and I just thought I would like to clarify this point. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Now, if now you look at the picture, this picture speaks 1,000 words. It is life. It is human. Look at the eye. What does it reflect? What does it show? That is what a course is to be designed as, and that is one of the oxygenation elements of teaching presence. When you humanize the course by planning it, that is when the teaching presence is alive in the course. Then you look at the interaction with the teacher's digital presence is not a choice. The course has to be designed in a way where the student is not able to get away from the teacher being involved in it. The teacher is not forcing the student to do anything. But the course design is forcing the student to interact with the teacher, and the teacher becomes part, the teacher's digital presence becomes part of the student's activity, whether the student likes it or not, but it is right there. There's no way getting out of it. Next slide, please. The next element of oxygenation in teaching presence is that it creates extensive, meaningful interaction. If you look at the picture, you see all these students who are eager to interact, eager to participate. You look at the faces, I mean, they really want to do it. They are raising their hand saying that, look at me, I want to take part in it. That is what is required in any course design, and that is what teaching presence is all about. It supports the development of deep learning. We all know that deep learning is something which you can take away from your class, go into a different scenario, adapt it, and then use it. But on, on the other hand, surface learning is what it is, just surface learning. But teaching presence ensures that you take home deep learning. And then teaching presence creates it develops a community of inquiry. When you looked at the three-circle model, which was a community of inquiry, the whole concept of community of inquiry model is to develop community of learners, because that is what helps in social engagement, that is what helps in social presence, in cognitive in learning, and that is what they all try to do. And this is what you can achieve by teaching presence. Next slide, please. Look at the goals. If a goal is what you can see in the picture, just forget about it. But teaching presence is something that will help in creating goals that are attainable and appropriate, and only those goals can be achieved that are attainable and appropriate. Next slide. The other thing, most important thing in today's age in terms of teaching presence, is that students come back and say, why do we even need a teacher? We have Google, we have Wikipedia, we don't need anybody. We can get what we want. So if the teachers are still trying to teach, then there's no place for them. The teacher's role as a designer will never cease to exist. In fact, more the information out there, more the need for designing the course. And the teachers need to put the information into context will never cease to exist. So that is the teacher's role now. That is part of the teaching presence, where they can have the student interested and invited back to them so that they can keep talking about whatever is done. Next slide, please. Now, from all the studies that I did, some recommendations came up. And as I said, if you want to really sort of see what I went through, what I produced, please, you have the link on the in the discussion forum. That is a direct ProQuest link. Go there and you'll see my dissertation out there. And I have a good teaching present practices. It's like a chart out there. It's an appendix, in the dissertation. You can see that. Then what I found was that when teachers teach the same course on ground and online in the same semester, these two should be and ought to be taught so differently that teachers can get confused between one and the other. But if you want to use the same technique, pedagogy, for teaching both the courses, that's your choice. But they're so different. The same course taught online and on ground. Then the instructional designers should include, as part of the design responsibility, a course key and a decoding narrative. Reason: the instruction designer has a certain thought process. The teacher who teaches the course does not know what the designer was thinking about, what actually the designer wanted to do, why did A, why did B, why this thing was in this sequence. So therefore, there has to be a decoding narrative by the master designer to guide the teachers. And then in some cases, the master courses are locked. Now, a teacher already does not have any input in the course, and then you lock the course, it's disaster. Next slide, please. The other thing that I found out was there are 4 questions. If you can ask 4 questions from a teacher, you will know exactly if the teacher knows anything about teaching presence or not. You just ask the teacher, what is the teacher using the assessments and discussion boards for? The answer will tell you exactly if the teacher knows what it is for. The third and fourth question: teachers response, and approachability policy. How is that being followed? These four things will give you an idea as to whether the teacher even understands the teaching presence. And you'll be surprised. In my research, I talked to so many professors, and 75% of them did not really have an idea of how teaching presence should really affect the course that they design. Next slide, please. And this is the opportunity for future research. Should instructional designers carry any responsibility for the learning outcomes of the courses they design for others, especially master courses and cookie cutter courses? They design a course and then bye-bye. Now the teachers are left struggling with those courses. What happens when the outcomes are not as desired? Who is to blame? The master designer or the teacher? That's a question that requires future research. Next slide, please. And this is where I am done. And thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'll be willing to ask. And I'm available even after the this conference for any discussion or inputs or questions or whatever somebody may want to have from me. Thank you very much.
So we have a question. Would you be willing to actively help coach, guide students who might be interested in doing more research on this topic?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, that is my passion. I mean, I would love to help any student or anybody else who wants to do research on this topic, because trust me, this topic needs so much of research, and there's hardly, if you Google, teaching presence from the teacher's perspective, you will not find many articles on this. So therefore, there's a huge gap in the research, and I really want people, younger people who are doing their doctorate or any other research, for them to please, come forward and do it. And I'm willing to help in whatever way I can. As I said, I went through 300 articles and a lot of other books to get to where I got to. And so therefore, but those who are interested, I would like them to take a look at the dissertation, and the link is out there, read it, and there will be many things that you'll find in the dissertation that might answer a lot of your questions.
And we have a follow-up. How can we bring awareness?
Excuse me?
How can we bring awareness?
Awareness of teaching presence?
I would assume so, yes.
I guess so. See, the awareness of teaching presence can only come if you are able to make people understand what teaching presence actually does. And one way of doing that is the basic model that started the concept of teaching presence is the community of inquiry model. Now, I mean, if you have time, can you go back to the slides? The slide with the three circles. I think that is the fourth or the fifth slide.
Fourth or the fifth slide. Okay.
The fourth or the fifth slide, if you can go back.
Okay, hold on one second.
Yeah, probably fourth or fifth. The three circles.
Three circles. This one?
Yeah, this one. Okay. Now you see, I mean, if you look at this community. Go back.
Yeah, I think I pressed the button.
Yeah, this one. Okay. No, this is the community of inquiry model from where the whole concept of teaching presence started. Now, if you look at the three circles, there's a circle for social presence, there's a circle for cognitive presence, and there's a circle for teaching presence, and all three are intersecting each other. But what you will see basically is that the research on social and cognitive was there much before. It was only in 2000 or maybe 1999 that this concept of teaching presence came out, because what they realized was that teaching presence is something that creates an atmosphere for the social presence and cognitive presence to interact faster, deeper, and get better results. The only way you can make people aware of teaching presence is for them to start from this model, understand this, and then, as I have given different in my different slides, we have the oxygenation elements of teaching presence. All those things have to be sort of, well, you can only market it outside. You can talk to people. People have the need to look at them, understand them, and sort of reflect upon it. And as I said, I was really disappointed when I was talking to professors who had been teaching for 15, 20, 25 years, and my question to them on teaching presence would draw blanks from them. And that surprised me, and that disturbed me a lot. So there's a lot of work to be done on the teaching presence awareness. And I think younger people can really do that if they go out and sort of do more research on it. I hope that answers the question. But if not, then I am available later on for a one-to-one discussion.
Okay, that was our last question. We have about 3 minutes left. If you have any other final thoughts.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, I mean, can we go on to the last slide that I had? The one that you put in the end.
Yes.
The last one is just.
Yeah, yes, it's going. It froze a little bit. Here we go.
One,
This one?
last one. Yeah, this one. Okay. Now, but the next one, yeah. Things that will suffocate teaching presence is when you have a question answer forum, but you don't really respond to questions. When you have a discussion board, but you don't really monitor it, you don't participate in it. You do not understand the demographic balancing of your class, because the class could have people who are 45 years old. I was in a class and I was 70 years old, and the youngest student was 28 years old. Just imagine the difference of age. You can't teach the same way to me and to that 28-year-old guy. So you have to understand the balancing. Communication and interpersonal skills could be lacking. And then, some students are irresponsible and they're only transactional students. They're only there to get the degree, the paper. So you have to find that out first. Don't try and teach them because they don't want to learn. And then sometimes, and that's the worst part, sometimes the instructor is the issue by themselves. They are the issue by themselves. They are the problem. So you can't go to them and solve the problem. All these will suck out the oxygen from teaching presence, and there'll be a disaster. There'll be suffocation, and what they say, like hypoxemia, as they call it. So that is my last thought on this. And I've seen this happening in many courses I've reviewed, because I review higher education courses, and I've seen this happening. And sometimes there's no way around it. What will happen will happen.